Welcome to Believe in the Rams podcast, episode 128. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen, and today we will be discussing the Rams and Panthers. The Rams did end up winning 24-10. They move on to 3-3 and move into a very much needed bye. Before we get into the rest of the episode, I'd ask if you haven't already, on no matter what platform you're using, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you are on YouTube, be sure to hit the thumbs up button in addition to that, and drop a comment if you would like, as well as a review. If you want to review the podcast, you can definitely do that on all podcast platforms. But without further ado, let's dive into the show. So we move on here. We're going to talk about the Rams offense to start. In Matthew Stafford, obviously everybody is going to talk about the interception, but I think Matthew Stafford played a very good football game once again. If you take away the interception, which obviously you don't need to take away, it did happen. It was a pick six, and it did give Carolina their only touchdown of the game. But Matthew Stafford was 26 of 33 for 253 yards. He had a touchdown. He was only sacked once and had a 96.1 passer rating. He is the second quarterback in the NFL, only behind Geno Smith, and has been pretty much the entire year in pass completion. And I think that is definitely something that he prides himself on, completing a high number of passes, being accurate. And they haven't gone down the field anywhere near as much as what you would expect, but still 7.7 yards per reception is not bad. 10 of 13, 108 yards, 8.3 average, a touchdown, interception, 94.4 passer rating when blitzed. And when kept clean, Matthew Stafford was 21 of 26 for 8.2 average, 213 yards, a touchdown, interception, and 97.6 passer rating. So how did the Rams really do this? I think overall they won this game because I don't think the other team's very good. But on top of that, I really do think that the Rams played well in certain areas of their team. The offensive line kept Stafford clean, despite the fact that Noteboom goes down after only playing four reps in pass pro. And now all of a sudden you have to shift everything on the offensive line. You have Bobby Evans coming in. He's left guard coming in this game, and you have Cologne obviously at center, but now you're moving Alaric Jackson from right guard to left tackle. And then on top of that, you move Ode Abushi, who wasn't even on this roster, a month ago, and now he's starting at right guard. It's your 10th different starter on the offensive line. It's going to be your 7th different starting combination going into the 49ers game. So pretty crazy stuff to only give up one sack. And it wasn't even really given up. At the end of the day, it was credited to Matthew Stafford for holding on the ball too long. That says a lot. He threw a really bad interception, and really the reason it was so bad is because it gave the Panthers momentum when your defense was absolutely stifling them, for one. For two, it was at the end of the first half, so you're trying to get points, but you're definitely not trying to get anything there. You're not trying to give them any sort of reason to feel like they're in this game, let alone a lead. You're trying to go down and score, and at the very least, if you don't score, you run out the clock, and the Panthers don't get the ball back. Instead, that was not how that happened. Stafford was only pressured 7 times in this game, and like I said, he took a sack that he was given, but he's very accurate in getting the ball to Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Ben Skoranek, and whoever else he was targeting in this game. Stafford in the game plan, in my opinion, based on what I watched, didn't involve the deep ball. And I know maybe it was probably there, like they probably had a moment where they wanted to test it, but for the most part, no throws past 20 yards, according to PFF. So they didn't really rely on the deep ball. It was the short intermediate game, getting the ball out quickly. And what this ultimately does, I think, is it gives your offensive line confidence. If you're not giving up sacks, then your offensive line is going to feel pretty good about themselves, right? So when you're getting the ball out quickly, it doesn't matter how it happens. If at the end of the game, the offensive line didn't give up a sack and only had 7 pressures compared to last week with 25 and the week before that with 28, I think they're going to take that to the bank and accept that for what it was. Stafford was 7 of 8 on the medium 10 to 19 yard passes for 107 yards and a touchdown. And he had a perfect passer rating when targeting the middle, the medium part of the field. And he was perfect on play action. Big thing here. Hopefully, as we come out of the bye, the Rams can develop more of a balanced run attack and open up the play action more, because today I mean, he was perfect in this game. 13 to 13 for 145 yards, 11.2 average yards per play. Absolutely love that from Stafford. He'll take that. I think anybody will take that. That it was a big day, honestly, to get that passing game going through the play action game. So looking at it, I understand there's going to be people that complain about Stafford. I get the interception was bad. I can't defend it. I was really upset about it. But I was upset because it really is going to kind of just shed that light. The light is going to be basically over Stafford the whole year, rather not the light, but the shadow, because it's always going to be about the interceptions, and it'll nullify what was a really good game played by Stafford, albeit the defense was a little banged up. But this is still a team that pressured the quarterback 88 times coming into this game. So I don't care. The offensive line played very well, and Stafford rewarded them aside from the interception. Moving on to the run game, I was confused. Going into this game, the Rams aren't going to have Cam Akers. So, obviously it sounds like he's done with the Rams and all of that. But I think part of what Cam Akers might have been saying, and I don't know what he said, but I heard philosophical differences with Sean McVay in using the running back. And while I think Cam Akers had the right approach here, because I don't think they utilized the running back enough, I don't think it made sense for him. This guy was averaging 2.9 yards per carry. Darrell Henderson was averaging 4.1. So in reality, I think he's right in a sense. It is hard to get running backs to get into a rhythm, but at the same time, it's not necessarily for him. And we kind of saw this in this game. Henderson had fewer carries in this game than Akers had last game with 12. Akers had 13. Henderson took 12 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown. He was absolutely clutch. He was needed on that 73-yard, 13-play drive with, took up 7 minutes of the clock, was capped off with the Allen Robinson twisting touchdown in the end zone. Absolutely loved it. Back pylon. That was so important. And Henderson took a 3rd and 15 after Matthew Stafford had an intentional grounding penalty. He took a 3rd and 15 and got 16 yards. He really led them on that drive. He also had a touchdown later on in the game where, this is somebody that I've heard a lot of the stuff out there. The naysayers always say this guy goes down first contact. I don't know how he stayed up then and got the touchdown in the red zone. But yeah, very, very exciting stuff there to see him doing that. He averaged 3 yards after contact per carry, which is something that has always been against Henderson, is that he doesn't break enough tackles. He broke 2. 36 of his 43 yards came after contact, but I am a yards per carry guy, and he did only have 3.6. So there are people that are going to knock him for that. My argument is, why was he only used 12 carries in this game? It is really confusing. Malcolm Brown was just elevated off the practice squad. He gets 7 carries for 15 yards. That's 2.1 yards per carry. That's not even as good as what Akers was doing. So really concerned there, the way they kind of, force fed this into a running back by committee, when in reality, I think you really have the better running back is Henderson. Ronnie Rivers got a carry for 0 yards, but I really liked Ronnie Rivers in the passing game. I think that's how they should use him. There was a moment deep in their own territory. You had a 2nd and 1 and a 3rd and 1. And they brought in not Henderson. They didn't have Henderson. They had Malcolm Brown. He gets stuffed. They put in Ronnie Rivers, 3rd and 1. He gets stuffed. And I'm sitting there with like this confused look, like Henderson is your best short yardage runner. He's your best runner, period. He should have been in there. I had a serious issue with that early on. The defense struggled mightily against the outside run coming into this game. One of the worst defenses in all of football when you run to the left and right end. And for whatever reason, the Rams didn't take advantage of this with the running backs. Henderson's one of the better running backs in football this year when running that toss crack to the left. I mean, teams have not been able to stop him, and he's really gashed teams because what that does is it allows him to basically read the field, use his lateral agility, and use his one-cut ability, essentially. And that's what he was coming out of Memphis. So it's confusing why they tried to use him up the middle a lot in this game. And I do think that actually had a negative impact on his yards per carry. Plus, I do think as well as the offensive line played as a pass protection unit, I do think they struggled mightily against the run. Shout out to Derek Brown. Shout out to Matt Ioannidis. Shout out to Brian Burns. Guys like that really made an impact, I thought, in stopping the run. So that's pretty much why that was the case. But, 7 receiver carries. Okay. I am all for that if it's working, whatever, but they kept using it to the outside, which is why it was working. Like if you use that with running backs, I think you would have had more success. But they used 7 wide receiver carries in total. They used Tutu Atwell. They used Cooper Kupp. They used Brandon Powell. They used all sorts. Ben Skoranek ran for a touchdown. So a little surprised there. And I do think, just bottom line, the stats show it. Teams respect Cam Akers less than they do Darrell Henderson in that Rams backfield, because when Darrell Henderson was in, first off, he has an 8% higher rate of 8+ defenders in the box, according to NFL Next Gen Stats, which tells me that they respect the run more when he's in. And secondly, this was the first time all year they've been able to really get the run going with the wide receivers, those jet sweeps. I don't think it was a coincidence it came when Henderson was starting. I think teams really respected Henderson more. They also ran to the deficiency of the defense to the outside, but I was a little surprised that they didn't really get Henderson his carries in this game, only 12. I thought he could have done more with more carries. He's more of a rhythm runner, and when you have him running once every play he's in, say they have 12. Not once every play, but once every drive. You have 12 drives, and now Henderson's running 12 times. Just kind of weird. I didn't really like the usage of Henderson in this game. It just felt like they never allowed him to get into a rhythm, and Sean McVay's forcing this running back by committee. And at this point, it's ridiculous because, I like Malcolm Brown as much as the next guy, but Malcolm Brown is not the runner Henderson is. He might have been in 2020. He's not now. So that was a little surprising there. And then, forcing Henderson as a decoy. He's 4th in the NFL in routes run for a running back in the entire NFL and has only 17 targets, while pretty much everyone else ahead of him has in the 25s to even 40s. You talk about Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon, who's tied with him, and Leonard Fournette and Devin Singletary. These guys have over 25 targets. It's kind of ridiculous. Plus, Henderson leads the league in running back snaps out wide by 3 more than the next running back. So right now, I've heard a lot of the people out there saying, you have to be at the game, you have to actually watch the game, you have to be at SoFi to understand that Henderson's calling himself out of the game because he's exhausted. And, if that's true, say I give it to you, that's true, right? It's true because Darrell Henderson is being given the 4th most routes run of any running back in the NFL. And he's running them out wide. And when you watch, he's being used as a decoy deep down the field. They're not wheel routes out of the backfield. He is being used as a decoy. So if that's the reason, then I hope they fix that, because that is not acceptable. It's not an excuse. Use him the best of his ability. Stop using him as a decoy. You're going to tire him out. And then when he comes in to run, he's going to be gassed. And then he's going to have to be, that's probably what's happening. Maybe you're right. But I've seen that too often, and I'm hoping they get that figured out. I think that's something where Van Jefferson shows up after the bye. They'll probably use Henderson more as a running back, more as a leak out running back, where if they use him in the passing game, they're not having him out wide. They still might do it, but maybe they won't. I don't know. But it's pretty bad when you're absolutely exhausting this guy if need be. Moving on to the passing game, Cooper Kupp went 80 yards, 7 of 8 targets. He's currently on pace to break Michael Thomas's single season reception record, and he's on pace for over 1,700 yards. The conversation, if he does that, I hope people realize the conversation shifts away from this guy being the best NFL wide receiver in the league to being one of the greatest NFL receivers ever. That conversation would shift, because those would be 2 back-to-back incredible seasons. And this guy is already, top 5 in Rams receiving. He is on his way. And I think we've seen that this year. It's not just the offense. It's not just Sean McVay. It's not just, Matthew Stafford. Not everything has gone well. And Cooper Kupp has done his best to, really make an impact because of that. Been really impressed with him. And he had a bad foot, they said, and he still had quite the game. Allen Robinson, 5 of 6 for 63 yards and a touchdown. You love to see it. They're finally using him in the way he should be used, playing above the rim. Everyone talks about his lack of separation, but they don't talk about the fact that he averages more yards of separation per play than that of DK Metcalf and, Kyle Pitts and, Pickens, George Pickens, and Mike Evans, and Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin. I mean, the list goes on. He averages, that's not his game, but it's not like he's not getting any separation. And in this game, they finally showed, he's not the issue. They just haven't been using him correctly. They finally gave him the jump ball. They finally gave him the jump ball near the sideline. Both came down with it. This is a guy that turns a 50-50 ball into an 80-20 ball. I've said that over and over again. Got to play above the rim, contorts his body, always has the wherewithal to get his feet in bounds. That body control is just rare, and he's got it. It's no different than throwing to Kenny Golladay, and it is a little different than throwing to Calvin Johnson, but it's no different than throwing to Kenny Golladay when Kenny Golladay was in Detroit, or Marvin Jones. So that's something to keep in mind. I think he's going to get more confidence. After the bye, we might see more of him. Van Jefferson might open him up more, so we'll see. I expect this offense to really take off after the bye, but again, stranger things have happened. Ben Skoranek, let's talk about him. 5 of 5 for 40 yards and a rushing touchdown on a 17-yard run. Look, Skoranek got all of the flack last year. He couldn't even enjoy winning the Super Bowl because he was a big reason why Stafford was picked off. He was a big reason why that game came down to the wire against the 49ers because he dropped a wide open touchdown in the AFC title game. But everyone kept saying to me, you got to cut him. You got to cut him. He's not good. Give Tutu Atwell his reps. Give Jacob Harris. Give Lance McCutcheon. And I kept staying here and sitting here and saying, look, he's a 7th-round pick that wasn't even utilized that much in college. He was a 7th-round pick that was forced into action. He's got invaluable experience, and if you give him a chance with the running back or the wide receiver room that he has, Eric Yarber is his wide receivers coach, Sean McVay, and Matthew Stafford, I think he's going to do some things. And we're seeing that he is now 2nd in average yards of separation in the league, only behind Gregory Dortch of the Arizona Cardinals. And he's 4th in fewest drops in the league. So his drop percentage is the bottom of the league. That is saying a lot for a guy that dropped almost every target thrown his way last year. He looks grown. He looks like a brand new receiver. And imagine that this is what happens when you develop and you don't give up on your young talent. Imagine what a 7th rounder can do, when you actually show him the ways and you give him that experience. All these guys can play in the league. We're watching it over in New England. This Bailey Zappi kid doesn't look very bad. There's a chance he might end up being the starter over Mac Jones. It could be the next Tom Brady. I might be kidding there, but the point still stands. Skoranek is talented. Anyone in the NFL is talented. It's a matter of them getting their actual chances, and Skoranek is making the most of his. So when Van Jefferson comes back, the Rams are going to feel really good about being 4 deep there, maybe even getting Odell back, like I believe they will. Then you're 5 deep. You got Tutu at 6. You got to feel really good about your receiver room, especially the way you were battered with injuries. You're battered with injuries this year. You're battered with injuries last year. You know how quickly everything can go south. And with that said, another guy who's starting to be featured a little bit more is Brandon Powell, who caught 4 for 27 on 5 targets. He had 3 carries for 13. I like his usage. I like that they're getting him involved. I mentioned it as kind of like an idea last year, and it's nice to finally see him being utilized in the offense. I think the guy has talent, and he was this close away from getting a touchdown. So, I don't know about fantasy relevancy, but he's getting there as far as the confidence that this team has instilled in him. And Ronnie Rivers was displaying some good vision, ball carrier vision, balance, and receiving ability out of the backfield on his 14-yard catch. Malcolm Brown added 13 on a catch. Henderson caught 2 on 3 targets for 9 yards. I feel like they really just use him as a decoy. I mean, obviously, I think this guy should be used like Kamara, but he's not. Just running those really low percentage, deep ball type of situations where he's running streaks down the field and Stafford's not targeting him. So, there's definitely that. And then Higbee only came away with 2 targets in this game after being second on the team coming into this game. I think a lot of it has to do with he showed up on the injury report and he's probably more banged up than Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp who were also on the injury report. And so they tried to kind of keep him in the game plan in case they needed him, but they didn't want to push him too far because they felt like they had this game won and other guys could step up when needed. Higbee will be fine. I can't see him having another game like that for a long time. I mean, he's a very good tight end and he's playing his best football this year. So I feel like that was more about the injury. Moving on the offensive line, six different combination, like I pointed out, that ties the 6 all-time or 6 all of last year. So that's crazy. They've already tied the 6 different combinations of last season on the offensive line in week 6. They'll have 7 in week 8 when they come back from their bye, which is nuts. Noteboom unfortunately tore his Achilles, so he is out for the year and might have to move to guard next year. But the good news for the Rams is that the offensive line shakeup actually worked out well. I think Noteboom was going to play well in this game anyway. He just seemed like he was definitely on in those 4 pass protection reps. But regardless, they only gave up 7 pressures. And despite the fact you're moving pieces everywhere, you got Alaric moving over from right guard to left tackle. You're taking a guy who hasn't started in the NFL with your team and was just added to this roster a month ago in Ibushi, and you're putting him at right guard. And it worked. Alaric Jackson looks like the future of the left tackle position. He was dominant, and he went up against Brian Burns and didn't allow a pressure. Burns got a pressure, but it wasn't going up against him. They moved Burns away from him. So I think that speaks volumes to the type of player that Alaric Jackson is. And I'm very, very excited for his future with the Rams. And I hope they sign him ASAP, because you have to know you have something with him and you have to get him signed immediately so you don't lose him. Bobby Evans. Man, do I get on this guy a lot, but last week I didn't get on him because he only gave up 1 pressure and 11 opportunities. I did point out I thought he played pretty well. Well, this time he had 34 opportunities and only gave up 1 pressure. So I thought he was stout in pass pro, could have been better in the run game, and I think that's something he needs to work on, but he is athletic. And that's the thing. When the Rams went out and got him in the 3rd round out of Oklahoma, they got a guy that they believed could be a right tackle of the future, could play left tackle, could play guard because of his athletic, ability and his versatility. And right now at left guard, it's 2 games in a row, not full games, but he's given up 2 pressures and a little bit over 45 snaps. I mean, I definitely want to see this, if they can keep this up, because he is a free agent. It would be good for him. It'd be good for the Rams if, they got him cheap or whatever, but they need this right now. There's not a guarantee that David Edwards will be back because of the concussion and going on IR. You don't know, and you don't want to screw around with that. So Bobby Evans playing this well is a good thing. And then you look at Jeremiah Colon, and he struggled, but I felt a little bit better about him this week. I know he gave up 4 pressures, but no sacks given up. And I don't know. There's something about him this week. I saw more confidence. He was going up against big, bad Derek Brown, who, my God, that guy dominated this game. And it doesn't show it because the Rams were able to move around him. But that interior pressure that he was able to have and what he was able to do against the run, I'm a big fan of Derek Brown. That's a former 1st-round pick, and that's for a reason. He's a hell of a talent. I thought Henderson was stellar in pass pro. He gave up a pressure according to PFF, and PFF gave him a really bad grade, 32. I don't understand why. Based on what I watched, I thought Henderson was outstanding in pass pro. There was that 1 rep where I think almost Stafford got in his way a little bit, but he didn't even give up the sack, and he was able to get around him and block the right guy. What makes Henderson so good in pass pro is that he knows he has the football IQ to block the right guy, but then on top of it, when he blocks him, he's like a mini offensive line. He mirrors well, and then on top of that, he has outstanding footwork. So that, I don't know, that's just something that I've noticed. Once again, I thought Ibushi played well, only gave up 1 pressure. was thrown in there, not in the middle of the game, but towards the beginning of the game, and I thought he played really well. Had a couple bad reps, but I think it was more so when he got acclimated and got more in tune with the rest of the offensive line. They played as a collective unit, and you saw the best out of him there. Once again, the Rams started their 10th different offensive linemen, and will have their 7th different starting combination coming out of the bye. So do not forget that. The hope is they're going to get Brian Allen back for the 49ers game, but that's not a guarantee. So we'll see how that goes. On the defensive side, the defense was all you could ask for, okay? They did not generate a ton of pressures, only 5. But I do think that was part of what the Panthers were trying to do. They were just trying to get the ball away quickly. They did not trust PJ Walker against this defense. This defense was so dominant. Jalen Ramsey got his 2nd sack of his career in back-to-back weeks. Marquise Copeland continues to ball out. He got a sack in this game, and he outsnapped Greg Gaines in this game as well. He had 24 snaps, and Gaines was in the teens. So I don't know what's going on there, but Gaines is a contract year guy, and Copeland could take over because you don't know how Bobby Brown is going to be. We'll talk about him in a little bit later, but the pass rush again was held in check. The defense only gave up 3 points despite that. And the defense has been absolutely fantastic the last 4 weeks. The Rams should be 5-1 because of it. They've held teams to under 20 points. It has just been exactly what the doctor ordered. And while they do give up some splash plays here and there, they still do such a good job in alleviating the pain. And I will say this, if you haven't figured it out by now, this is Raheem Morris's last year. He is 100% going to be a head coach at the end of the year. He has done a magnificent job. The Rams defense is in mid-season form right now. And just wait, because I don't think the pass rush is as great, because I think you look at a guy like Leonard Floyd and you've seen what he's done even without Von Miller. So it wasn't a Von Miller thing. He's still with AD. And I think Leonard Floyd, you give him some time, after the bye, I think he'll come back. He'll be healthier. He was dealing with a knee. I think he'll come back, and I think he'll be better, as a pass rusher. I think it'll open up things for the other side. Hollins had a pressure in this game. Lewis has been kind of a disappearing act after starting off the season, pretty well. And it doesn't look like they'll have Daniel Hardy back anytime soon. So they have Tack McKinley, but I definitely think that they could be looking at a pass rusher at the deadline, maybe even before the deadline, because you have the bye. That's the time. If you could trade for a guy at the bye, then now you can kind of acclimate him over the bye week. So that would be ideal, because I do think this team needs to generate more than 5 pressures in a game. I do think it was more based around the fact that the Panthers got rid of the ball quickly and they weren't throwing the ball deep down the field. So because those plays don't have to develop, it's harder to get pressure, but they're not getting the pressure that they need to get. And I do think that falls on the edge, and we'll see. I think we'll see a move. I really do. Everyone's talking about Christian McCaffrey. I don't see how McCaffrey helps, as much as what people are saying. I think if you just use Darrell Henderson the right way, if you mix your pitches up with, Ronnie Rivers and Malcolm Brown, and then when Kyron comes back, that's fine, because I expect the offense, the passing game, to take it up a notch when Van Jefferson comes back, potentially OBJ. I don't think they need to go out and get a running back, and they definitely don't need to pay top dollar for a running back. I'm always, told how running backs don't matter, and then the same people who are saying running backs don't matter want to trade for a running back. I don't want to trade premium picks for a running back. That doesn't make sense to me. However, trading premium picks for a pass rusher does, and I think that's possible, whether it is Brian Burns at the end of the day. I don't know if they're going to trade him. I really believe if he's available, if he can be had, he will be a Ram. That's as best as I can put that. But if he is not available and the Panthers don't want to trade him, then he's not available and the Rams can't get him. That also leaves the door open for Washington, who doesn't look like a good football team, in my opinion. You look over at Montez Sweat. I think Montez Sweat becomes an option. The Bears don't look like a good football team. Robert Quinn becomes an option. So those are some guys to keep in mind. Josh Uche, who's having a pretty solid year for the Patriots, but isn't utilized anywhere near as much as he could be. He could be an option. So do not rule those out. I do think the Rams are going to make a play for a pass rusher, because there's no way you're watching this team and thinking, man, all they need is a running back. Okay, they have plenty of talent at running back. They just don't run the ball enough, and they force this committee backfield that shouldn't be forced. But pass rush, as great as this defense is, pass rush allows you to start taking the ball away and giving your offense more opportunities, stealing possessions. How big was it to have Von Miller off the edge and hitting, colliding with Aaron Donald in the backfield, meeting in the backfield, with a running back or with a quarterback and forcing a fumble? Fumbles are huge. You want to force turnovers, and I think the best way you do that is with pressure. It also helps the corners out, and so I think that's where the direction lies. I think that's where they were going. I think that's always where they were going. They wanted to test it out, and at the trade deadline, it allows them to test everything out. All right, we waited. Now we'll make this trade. You're not hustling to trade away your picks because you do have value. The Rams have drafted good players with draft picks, but I think it makes sense to hold on, and that's what they did. So at the end of the day, I like the Rams going out and getting a pass rusher. I don't think they get a running back. And while this is a little off where we were talking about, the defense is still doing a great job, and I'm not trying to say they're not, but they need pass rush because it may not hurt against the Panthers. It may not hurt against the Cardinals or the Falcons or any of those type of teams. But when you start playing against Tom Brady, when you start playing against Aaron Rodgers, when you start playing against Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson, I mean, those guys can make you pay if you're not putting pressure on them. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's why I think the Rams 100% are going to get a guy by the deadline, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's during the bye week. We move on to what I was saying before all that. Ernest Jones balled out. Great game. Okay, he had a huge tip ball towards the end of the game. Poor Jacob Eason, all he does is throw picks from the Rams. He had a huge tip ball that went into a Nick Scott interception, who I will say needed that because Nick Scott's been missing a lot of tackles, and I really like the guy, but he's started to struggle a little bit. But you know who didn't struggle? Taylor Rapp. That's right. Guy gets a lot of flack, and I've given him some flack lately, but Taylor Rapp had one of the best games I've seen him play in his career. I thought he was outstanding. Didn't break, no tackles given up, did not miss a tackle. Just thought he played with some serious edge, and I liked him in coverage. I thought he was solid in coverage. I thought he was good, at just dropping in, operating around the line of scrimmage, and able to make the plays needed. And I thought you saw that. It showed up, when I rewatched the game. Corners, Darion Kendrick, David Long, and Jalen Ramsey absolutely shut down the Panthers. You can say what you will about the Panthers being banged up. You can mention Robbie Anderson, who's already on the Cardinals at the time I'm recording this. You can talk about, okay, like they're not throwing the ball deep down the field, but they still have DJ Moore. They still have Tommy Tremble. Okay, Laviska was out, but they still have Terrace Marshall. He's a former second-round pick in his own right. They like Shi Smith. I mean, they just shut down the wide receivers. That's what happened. They shut him down so badly. There were 6 receptions for Carolina that went for 27 yards. That's an absolute beatdown by the Rams secondary. And the defense held PJ Walker to get this. I could not believe this stat when I saw this come through on Twitter. Next Gen Stats was, according to Next Gen Stats, PJ Walker had his longest air yard completion of 1 yard. Everything else came behind the line of scrimmage. That is insane. That is a dominant performance. There's hardly any pass rush that was being generated, and they forced this. So that tells you that this defense can be an absolute freak show if they had another good pass rusher on the outside. I think Floyd will get it together. I think it's more so the injuries. He's had a slow start. Coming off the bye, I think he'll be rejuvenated, and I think he'll be good to go. And I think you're already starting to see, Floyd is playing a little bit better. But make no mistake, if they go out and get like a Montez Sweat on the other side or somebody like that, even Robert Quinn, that is exactly what they need for this defense to really take off. They'll get Troy Hill back at some point. They'll get Jacoby Durant, who's also banged up. I think he was really close to playing in this game, so he'll be ready to go for week 8. And I think that speaks volumes to what they believe in him. They didn't want to bring him back in this game because they felt like they could handle it, and they like him long term. So if maybe this guy ends up starting ahead of David Long next week, who knows? Or, the next time they play. But that was definitely telling. But anyway, they're going to get healthier on defense. They're going to get healthier on offense. And so when they do, at that point, we'll know who the Rams really are. And I think as much as everyone's talking about OBJ and Christian McCaffrey, I think the thing that the Rams really could use is a premier pass rusher off the edge. And you could say what you will about Robert Quinn. It's not just a reunion of sorts. If they could get Robert Quinn back, this guy had, 19 sacks last year? He's a damn good pass rusher. He'd be back with Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, the way Marquise Copeland's playing, A'Shawn Robinson, Greg Gaines, potentially Bobby Brown. There's a lot to like here, but I think that they're missing one pass rusher. I like Justin Hollins as an edge defender. I like Terrell Lewis as a flashy edge defender that he can win a rep, and one time he wins a rep, you're like, this guy's the best pass rusher in the league. He looks like the most decorated pass rusher in the league. He has reps like that, but then he has a rep where you're like, where'd he go? I didn't even see him. So you want to see more out of Terrell Lewis. You want to see more out of Justin Hollins, but you have to also understand that maybe that's what they are. They're guys that can flash at times. Justin Hollins is more of the conservative type of, basically you want to contain. He's not really going to attack, but he's going to contain. He's not going to show as much aggressiveness. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, this defense, all in all, aside from that, I think has been superb, and they're playing at the right time. Hopefully they keep this going outside the bye, and the Rams can get back and stay in the win column for a while. I do believe that. Special teams, real quick, looking at it, Riley Dixon, once again, continues to be a solid punter for the Rams. Have no issue with them keeping him. Matt Gay was perfect, 3 extra points and a field goal. I know he missed one last week. He was pretty bummed about that, but, good stuff from him. How about Michael Hoyt? He got the return. It was a little bit of a squib kick type of kickoff, and he took the return and looked like an animal with the ball in his hand. So love to see that. Powell didn't really get much of a chance, but he did take a punt return for 15 yards and, was a help in the run game and the receiving game. But in the special teams unit, the 15-yard punt return is definitely good. Grant Haley, Christian Roseboom, Jake Gervais, Russ Yeast, and Jake Hummel deserve recognition. They played very well on special teams, and I think really this year, Haley and Yeast have been the special teams aces. The Rams got a serious special teams ace in Russ Yeast late in the draft. That is going to be a guy who turns into like a Nick Scott. That's somebody they like a lot. And I'm excited, for him. I'm excited for Quentin Lake long-term whenever he starts playing. And Grant Haley, he should have played more on the offense, or not the offense, but more on the defense. But he took the back seat a little bit, just went back on special teams and balled out. I thought he was outstanding. So that was that. On to the bye for the Niners week. Basically, the thing that we're looking at, get healthy, right? Van Jefferson, Jacoby Durant, Brian Allen, maybe Quentin Lake, maybe Traven Howard. I want to see all those guys in some capacity back. Hopefully you get Bobby Brown the third back from the suspended list. We'll see how that goes. He's a 4th-round pick in his own right. They do like him, so we'll see how much they like him. I can't imagine they cut him or trade him or anything like that, but we'll see. We'll see how they acclimate him and all that. Hopefully we get some news about Troy Hill and Kyron Williams. Maybe they come back to practicing. Would love to see those guys get involved more. And then hopefully they work on the run game a little bit. Go over things, over the bye. See if you can get the ground game going consistently. Run more with Henderson, commit to it. Stop using him as a decoy. Now that Van Jefferson's back, there won't be much of an excuse to have him running, giant streaks down the field on the outside when he's your running back and making him tired, so then he can't be your running back. And then I think you want to focus potentially, I mentioned the edge, but you also want to focus potentially on, seeing if you can acquire some more depth on the offensive line. They're on to their 10th starter at this point, so even though I'm not necessarily saying trade for a starter because I like where they're at right now. I know that sounds weird, but I do. I don't think it hurts to go out and get another depth piece to replace Noteboom because you do now have an open spot. Noteboom's going to go to IR. He's done for the year. Now you have an open spot. You could say that could go to Van, but I would argue that you want to bring in another offensive lineman. You've already been proven that you need offensive line. I know they took, Chandler Brewer, they elevated him to the active roster off the practice squad. He still goes back to the practice squad. So he's still just an elevation. You have guys like Matt Skur on the roster. You have guys like Ibushi, but I would like to see them try to see if they can get somebody maybe cheap. Maybe, if there's an Austin Corbett guy out there that a team doesn't want to develop, maybe it's Isaiah Wynn. I don't know. But I would like to see them try and do something there because I do think you need some depth on the offensive line. It's going to be ridiculous. I mean, you're in a David Edwards season away, like out for the year away from really being in a tough spot. Brian Allen setback. You always have to think about things like that. You don't have Noteboom. Edwards is on IR. He's going to miss 4 weeks because of that. Allen, the hope is that he'll be back, but you never placed him on IR. And, if you were to have a setback or something, then you don't have him. Those are 3 of your 5 starters that are out. Your right guard that you drafted in the 3rd round, Logan Bruss, had a freak ACL tear in preseason. You don't have him. You don't have Coleman Shelton, and then at right tackle, you just have Havenstein. So it was great to see Havenstein get going in this game. It was great to see all the others, but depth is key, man. The Rams are better for going through this, in my opinion, because like Sean McVay mentioned, all these guys are getting an opportunity. Like we talked about, Ben Skoranek is better today because he got the opportunity yesterday. And what I mean by yesterday is last year. So Cologne is going to be better because he had already faced this. So if they need him in the playoffs, if all of a sudden they go down and now Cologne is starting in the playoffs, he has experience starting. If that happens, Ibushi has experience starting. Evans has experience starting. Alec Jackson has experience. Like, this is good and bad. But we're going to focus on the good here because this experience is invaluable. There's nothing like live bullets and live NFL regular season snaps. And that's why it is so key here. If they can continue to win these games and they can build this confidence, it's only going to get better, in my opinion, for these guys. And, I'm excited about that opportunity for Sean McVay and company. So at the end of the day, the Rams are 3-3. They head into a much-needed bye. They're going to try to get healthy. And in addition to that, they got Niners week coming out of that. So big opportunity here. The Niners lost to the Falcons. The Buccaneers lost. The Packers lost. All the big dogs lost, right, in the NFC except for the Eagles. So the Rams have a huge opportunity here because the 49ers lost, and now they're 3-3. They have the tiebreaker over the Rams, as we know, so they're ahead. But it's a 3-way tie for the NFC West title right now. If the season ended today, the 49ers have a head-to-head win over the Rams and Seattle, so they're number 1. The Rams, however, are going on a bye. So the 49ers lost to the Falcons. Now they play the Chiefs coming off a loss to the Bills, and they play the Rams. So people will look at this and say, there's no way the Rams are beating the Niners. The Niners aren't losing 3 straight. But I'm going to look at it like this. If the Rams come out of the bye and they play well, and they're not rusty, and they defend their home turf, and they beat the Niners, they just put the Niners in a 3-game losing streak. That skid is going to come back to bite them, because I'll tell you right now, if you can get the Niners 3 games on a 3-game losing streak, if you can win that game, the Rams are now 4-3, the Niners are now 3-5. So it changes everything. It completely changes everything. You don't play the Niners again the whole year, and I would argue that the majority of their team is based on basically beating the Niners or beating the Rams. So if you beat the Niners, you put yourself in a good position to win that division. Then you got Seattle left. You already played Arizona once. You'll have Arizona again. So, it's something to keep in mind. But it's an exciting opportunity for the Rams, and I don't know. I think Sunday was a reminder that if you're one of those people that says there's no way they're going to do it, they're done, they're not going to repeat, they might not even make the playoffs, well, it was a reminder because Kenny Pickett was beating Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, the team that a lot of people had winning the NFC, and Pickett goes down, he gets concussed, And what do you know? Mitch Trubisky comes in and still beats Tampa Bay. Tampa's honestly a bad call away from potentially being 2-4 right now with the Falcons. So that's something to keep in mind. And then in addition to that, you look at the Packers. Packers lost to both New York teams. They lost in London, and they just got dominated by the Jets, 27-10. It's just a constant reminder. I mean, 28-14 was the score. Like, the Falcons dominated the 49ers. So this is the league. The Ravens had multiple possession wins, or so they looked. They were winning by multiple possessions the last 3 losses they've had, and they lost all 3 of those games after leading by multiple possessions going into the fourth quarter. So the Rams are out of it. And if you're sitting there giving up on this team, you're going to miss what could be a really fun ride. It's exciting because Sean McVay is having to go through what is very similar to a 2019 look, but he could prove a lot of people wrong. I think they get Van Jefferson back. I think they get Brian Allen, and I think they win against the Niners coming out of the bye. But we'll see. Until next time, I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and this has been the Believe in Rams podcast. You can follow, you can subscribe, you can drop a comment, you can drop a review, you can hit the thumbs up button. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and I'll see you guys soon.